and welcome to our webinar on aligning housing and workforce systems. My name is Connor McDonald, and I'm a housing integrator with Oregon Housing and Community Services. For those of you who aren't familiar with Oregon Housing and Community Services, we're the state's housing finance agency, providing financial and program support to create and preserve opportunities for quality, affordable housing for Oregonians of low and moderate incomes. Our vision is that all Oregonians have the opportunity to pursue prosperity and live free from poverty. We know at OHCS that those struggling with housing, either homeless or at imminent risk of losing housing, have difficulties completing vocational training and accessing career track employment, which ultimately lifts families out of poverty. The Economic Opportunity Program, as we'll be learning about today, sets out to tackle this challenge. And you all will be delighted to hear about their results and achievements by aligning rental assistance and workforce investments resources to improve people's lives. Imagine yourself as a mother of two, such as Juanita, as outlined in the study, or the evaluation, in other words. She wanted to access career track employment, but had a lot of difficulties because she had two children and she was the only person at home, both to take care of the kids and as well as work. This program particularly helped her access a better job, which pays more, as she's also continuing to pursue her ultimate dream of becoming a nurse. We at OHCS understand the importance of housing stability and the importance of aligning these resources, which ultimately multiplies the impact. Before I start, or before we go over to the presentation, there's a couple components of this project that are particularly interesting to me. First is that it's really been an evolution of a lot of existing body of work that's been going on. And so it's actually a byproduct. The EOP project is a byproduct of that work between Worksystems, housing providers such as the Housing Authority of Portland, now known as Home Forward, and various service providers. We ask you all to join us today, not only because we want to talk about an impactful project, but also to share a model with you all to help inform the existing work that you're doing. Either you're looking for a spark and new idea, not sure how to reach out and connect with your work board, or it may be that you have an existing model and you're looking for some new ideas. We invite you to ask questions, and will be available for post-webinar follow-up after the webinar. Another really key component of this webinar, and this project, is that it's creatively braided federal, state, local, and philanthropic resources behind the scenes to improve the lives of people on the ground. It's a great model and can be tweaked and employed in your own community. As I mentioned, philanthropy played a big role in this project, and so it's a pleasure for me to introduce a key partner in this initiative, Michael Parkhurst, Program Officer of Meyer Memorial Trust, who I know is very keen on systems alignment work and integrating services. Take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Connor. My name is Michael Parkhurst. I'm a Program Officer with Meyer Memorial Trust. If you're not familiar with us, we're one of the larger private foundations in Oregon, based in Portland, but we work with folks all over the state, funding a broad variety of different sorts of social services and community needs, including housing. And I work on the Housing Opportunities team. We partner with folks all across the state on a whole range of housing issues. And this project, our support for this project grew out of what we call the Affordable Housing Initiative, which was a 5-year focused investment by Meyer around specific strategic priorities related to affordable housing. And that really drew on a lot of outreach we did with community partners who had been working with us around issues for years and years. And we asked folks, where are the compelling opportunities? Where are the real needs? Where's a place where philanthropy can make a difference? One of the things we consistently heard from folks is better coordination and better alignment between housing and services is really critical. And we took that to heart, and I think we understood there was a lot of different areas where you could better align different kinds of supportive services and affordable housing. So in 2015, we put out a request for proposals, which this project responded to, designed to promote exactly that kind of work, better coupling up supportive services and housing We construed that pretty broadly. We left the door open to folks to define the best approaches to that, since we're not really the experts on that. And we funded projects that's related to health and housing, child welfare and housing, and of course workforce development and housing, among other things. I wanted to say just a little bit about why we were excited about this project, and then we'll get into the presentation. So there was a very compelling rationale in the proposal. The proposal talked about people struggling to finish their education or their training and get jobs when their housing was very unstable, or maybe they were even living in their car, or we heard stories of people essentially sleeping in the hallways of the community college and trying to finish their degree. And that really was telling to us, and we could understand clearly how stabilizing people's housing would help them realize their employment goals. There was a terrific, really strong trio of partners that we don't always see these sorts of partners work well together, and so we were really happy to support that, and that included Worksystems, which was the Workforce Development Agency, Human Solutions, which is a really robust community development corporation that does housing programs and services, and then the broader continuum of care, including the Housing Authority for Multnomah County, Home Forward. Having those partners all together at the table, bringing different strengths to the work, and also including a larger group of community-based organizations that had real cultural competency in different particular communities that we knew were especially hard hit by housing instability was very compelling to us. So there was a really strong story around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a priority at Meyer, helping folks who experience historical structural disparities, especially in their housing outcomes, and are not always well served by mainstream or dominant culture organizations. With that, I'm about to turn it over, but I want to put in a plug for actually reading their written report they produced, which I think is an exemplary piece of program evaluation. It really shows off the successes that they had, and it won't take that long to read it. It's completely worth the investment. With that, again, thanks for joining me today, and thanks for joining us this morning. I'd like to introduce Claire Schaefer from Worksystems.
Thanks, Michael. Now I'll tell you about the Economic Opportunity Program, our systems alignment history, and the EOP model. The Economic Opportunity Program serves low-income residents of the City of Portland and Multnomah County who have incomes of up to 50% area median income. The majority of the people that we serve are below 30% of area median income. EOP provides career track training and employment services as a means to economic opportunity and housing. EOP connects participants with career coaches at local community-based organizations. They help participants connect with services and resources of the public workforce system, which in our region are called WorkSource Portland Metro Centers. The resources available at the centers include occupational training funds, workshops about job search and career planning, and job search assistance and placement. The Economic Opportunity Program began in 2012 with funding through HUD's Community Development Block Grant Funds and City of Portland General Funds from Prosper Portland and the Portland Housing Bureau. The program expanded through funds from Multnomah County's Department of Community Justice to specifically support reentry populations. Last year, the program expanded it again through A Home for Everyone in order to serve homeless and housing insecure individuals. A Home for Everyone is a community-wide plan and initiative to respond to the crisis of homelessness in Multnomah County. It is also the local entity that receives Continuum of Care funds for Multnomah County, the City of Gresham, and the City of Portland. Worksystems is the Workforce Development Board for Multnomah and Washington counties. For those of you who aren't familiar with Workforce Development Boards, we receive federal funds from the Department of Labor called Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds. They're also referred to as WIOA funds. These funds are used to run local American job centers and provide training and job placement services to the public. In Oregon, our American job centers are called WorkSource, and Workforce Development Boards run the centers jointly with the Oregon Employment Department. Worksystems also contributes WIOA funds for EOP. In addition, we coordinate the 10 nonprofit organizations who provide career coaching to EOP participants. As you can see with the list on the right, EOP and the rent assistance are funded by compounding many local and federal government resources. EOP partners noticed that participants who were homeless or housing insecure had challenges participating in the program and often dropped out. So Worksystems approached Home Forward about this issue, and we started the rent assistance pilot with funding from Home Forward in October of 2015. Home Forward is the housing authority for Multnomah County and the City of Portland. Last year, A Home for Everyone and the Portland Housing Bureau contributed additional rent assistance funding. The way that the rent assistance works is that Human Solutions administers the rent assistance funds, EOP career coaches refer participants in need, and Human Solutions helps homeless participants search for housing. The staff who coordinate the rent assistance are paid for with WIALA funds from Worksystems. Providing EOP rent assistance was not the first time that we have partnered with the housing system. Home Forward and Worksystems worked together on various projects, but our relationship was strengthened during the Housing Works program. Housing Works was a program funded by the Department of Labor from 2012 through 2016. The program brought employment services to housing authority residents through systems alignment of workforce development boards and housing authorities in 4 counties in Oregon and Washington. In addition to serving housing authority residents, systems alignment was one of the main goals of the program, and conversations about rent assistance started towards the end of the grant. After Home Forward dedicated funds for EOP participants, we decided that it was best to have a local organization who had expertise in short-term rent assistance to coordinate the rent assistance. Since we already worked with Human Solutions for years through EOP, it made sense to work with them given their understanding of both housing and employment services. Although we had already started the rent assistance pilot when A Home for Everyone was beginning, A Home for Everyone has further increased local systems alignment. It is a community-wide effort that brought many local entities together to reset the 10-year plan to end homelessness. The coordinating board includes representatives from local nonprofits, health organizations, and the business community. Worksystems Executive Director is also on the coordinating board and co-chairs the Workforce and Economic Opportunity Work Group. The collaborative nature of this group and the way that it obtains feedback from member organizations in its decision-making processes has increased systems alignment in our region. Within EOP, participants work on their career plans with career coaches at one of the 10 nonprofit organizations, which you can see listed here. A Home for Everyone has expanded the organizations that serve our EOP participants and allowed us to specifically serve homeless and housing insecure individuals. Through A Home for Everyone, we were able to add culturally specific organizations such as Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center, El Programa Hispano Católico, and Urban League, who had not been part of EOP in the past. Over the last 3 years, EOP has served more than 1,500 participants, with about 500 active at one time. About 70% exit the program with a job. The basic model of EOP is that participants work with a career coach to set their career plan. Then they assess their need for basic skills education and soft skills training together. When they're ready, they enter training, which can include occupational skills training, work experience, internships, and on-the-job training. Upon completion, and sometimes before they're done with their training, they'll work with their career coach on finding a job and also access the resources in the workforce centers for job search assistance and job placement. All along the way, they receive intensive services from their career coach, which can include support services and up to a year of retention and advancement services after they obtain a job. Now, Patricia McLean from Human Solutions will talk about the rent assistance and how we incorporate it into our model.
Hi. As Blair mentioned earlier, the career coaches and program managers saw that people were struggling with focusing with housing, either homeless or at imminent risk of losing their housing, and they were unable to complete vocational training programs and achieve their goals. This pointed to the need for rent assistance support for EOP participants. Worksystems reached out to their Housing Works partner, Home Forward, and Home Forward committed $125,000 in rent assistance funds for the first year of assistance, the 2015-16 program year. By the end of that program year, June 30th, we had enough data to show that rent assistance did help people continue and complete trainings and find employment. Home Forward renewed funding for the second year, and Home for Everyone and Portland Housing Bureau also contributed funds, bringing the total assistance to $475,000. We served a total of 169 unduplicated EOP participants who are homeless or at risk of homelessness with these funds. Worksystems contracted with Human Solutions to administer rent assistance due to Human Solutions' long history with housing and extensive landlord relationships. We developed a process which is seamless for the participant. The career coach refers an eligible housing insecure participant to the rent assistance coordinators at Human Solutions. All three meet at intake, which makes the process much more comfortable for the participant. It improves communication and aligns the housing and workforce goal plans. The rent assistance coordinator assists the participant with overcoming barriers to housing, such as criminal history, poor rental history, and landlord debt. On average, those who find housing do so in about 2.5 months. The rent assistance coordinator is able to start the payment process immediately for those who are housed but at risk. The rent assistance coordinator and career coach maintain communication about any issues related to the participant's housing throughout the rent assistance period, primarily through Worksystems database. For instance, career coaches can indicate the program status of rent assistance recipients, which the rent assistance the rent assistance coordinators check before requesting payment each month. Career coaches are also able to indicate why a participant needs to receive a rent assistance extension through the database. The following 4 slides contain data we analyzed from the first 18 months in which 80 participants were served. In order to address the disparate impacts of poverty on people of color in our community, equity is a major goal of our program. This slide regards racial and ethnic demographics. Because people can choose multiple categories of race or ethnicity, the percentages total to more than 100%. 30% of the total population of Multnomah County are persons of color. However, they comprise more than 50% of people experiencing poverty in the county, and more than 40% of the homeless population are persons of color. The outcome of our attention to equity is that 60% of those receiving rent assistance identified as persons of color. The culturally specific organizations that joined EOP last spring, but too late to be part of this data set, will further increase the percentages of people of color served by the program. Whenever it was necessary to stop taking referrals due to capacity or funding limitations, we collected data on those EOP participants who expressed a critical need for housing support. This became a natural comparison group. People who were on this list and continue to be eligible for rent assistance were prioritized when the rent assistance coordinators were able to start taking referrals again. Ultimately, there were 46 EOP participants in the comparison group. We compared their progress to the progress of the 80 rent assistance recipients. We found that those who received rent assistance were 38% more likely to complete vocational training, were 67% more likely to obtain career track employment, and were 53% more likely to be employed. Career track employment means that at exit from EOP, they had attained employment on track with their ultimate career goals. For instance, someone whose goal is to be a licensed practical nurse might be employed as a CNN. That would be career track, whereas a non-medical field position would not. The rate of increase in earned income for EOP recipients was nearly double the rate of the comparison group. Those who received rent assistance increased their annual incomes by an average of $13,124, compared to $5,274 for those with unmet housing needs. The rate of increase in earned income for EOP rent assistance recipients was nearly double the rate of the comparison group. Those who received rent assistance increased their annual incomes by an average of $13,124. Oh, this is the wrong slide. Sorry. Rent assistance recipients increased incomes more than tripled rent assistance investments. 41 rent assistance participants increased their incomes during the data analysis period. They received $238,200 in rent assistance. The total amount of annual increase in incomes for these participants was $718,600. 15 of the 41 are still enrolled in EOP and may further increase their incomes before exit. Okay, in spite of the ever-increasing rents in Multnomah County, 76% of EOP participants who received rent assistance have maintained their housing 1 year after their rent assistance ended. Our target was 90% at 3 months, 80% at 6 months, and 70% at 12 months. Rent assistance for EOP participants provided with the alignment of the housing workforce has led to greater success for EOP participants and has created greater returns on investment of public funds through increases in income. Housing outcomes show that at least 76% remained housed 1 year after rent assistance ends, and their economic stability and housing stability allows them to be self-supporting and creates room for others in need to access housing services. Naturally, there are more challenges to aligning systems than we've listed on this slide. Among others, there were data tracking, communications, and reporting challenges. The challenges on this slide revolve around services. The reason that rent assistance was created to begin with was to remove homelessness as a barrier to career track employment and not as a housing program, which seems like an easy thing to remember, but there's a lot of gray area. It was necessary to develop strong guidelines around eligibility. The primary eligibility is that the participant must be actively engaged in EOP. Is homelessness preventing them from engaging? To a certain extent, career coaches do have to rely on their experience with participants and set expectations for program engagement, which a participant can achieve given their housing insecurity. Once a participant is receiving the rent assistance, it can be hard to tell if the assistance is helping them work on their career goals. It is reliant upon the career coaches and their managers to review participant engagement and progress, especially when determining if rent assistance extensions should be given. We are still defining the terms of rent assistance. The nature of funding contracts for pilot programs often is that they don't start at the beginning of fiscal years, so you can have significant amount of money to spend in a short period of time without an option of carryover to the next year. For EOP rent assistance, this meant that we could allow more extensions in the first and second years. But now that we have full fiscal year to spend all of the funds, we have to step back a little and from approving extensions. This meant creating more guidelines. So one of the most important elements of successful systems alignment is the dedication and commitment of the leadership at the highest levels. Their belief in the effectiveness of systems alignment will communicate through management levels to direct services staff. The frequency of meetings involving program managers, career coaches, and rent assistance staff has been crucial for communication, collaboration, and improving the process so that participants have the best opportunity to be successful. Feedback. No decisions about rent assistance process were made without clear communication and direct services staff involvement. There are those who have, they are the ones who have to make it work, and they are the ones who know what is necessary for participants to be successful. Make sure that the intent of the program doesn't get lost. For example, the rent assistance is a support service for EOP, an employment program. It is important that the participants understand this so that people aren't signing up for employment services in order to get housing assistance, and so that we remember that we are supporting their employment success. The relationship between participant, career coach, and rent assistance coordinator is established at the joint intake meeting. Homelessness is traumatic. It is important to reduce anxiety whenever possible. Having the career coach with them when they meet the rent assistance coordinator helps them to know that they have the support of a team. Staff should look like the people they are serving whenever possible. It makes a difference to many people that the person sitting across from them shares cultural experiences and has an idea of the oppression they have encountered. Worksystems contracts with culturally specific organizations in order to help meet this need, and the rent assistance coordinating staff at Human Solutions also reflects the community. Finally, relationships are essential. A career coach put it just this way in one of our work group sessions. Relationships are essential. Take time to build them and accept that this takes time. The EOP rent assistance model brings housing services to those involved in workforce programs. Having rent assistance funding specifically for low-income housing insecure individuals who are engaged in vocational training and/or job search means that we can support people who are likely to quickly move into the workforce. But we recognize that a next step is to create a more direct process for referrals to employment services from the housing system. A Home for Everyone funds career coaches dedicated to providing employment services to homeless and housing insecure individuals. The Workforce and Economic Opportunity Work Group meets monthly to work on solutions for ending and preventing homelessness through increasing income. Recommendations and strategies developed in this work group are considered by AHFE's coordinating board for funding and support. EOP partners continue to look for new partners and creative ways to increase rent assistance funding. Despite the increase in rent assistance funding in the second year, the need far exceeds the current level of funding. Partnerships have started with the Department of Human Services in providing employment services to recipients of public benefits. Career coaches and DHS family coaches are working to align EOP activities and DHS requirements. A DHS representative now attends a Home for Everyone's Workforce and Economic Opportunities Work Group meeting. This slide is included as a snapshot of some systems alignment possibilities across Oregon. We have geographically matched workforce investment boards with housing authorities and continuums of care. You may already be familiar with potential partners in your area serving low-income people. Obviously, there are other organizations and systems in each area who are potential partners. It is likely that some of you have already made connections and have partnerships across systems in your regions. We hope that you share your experience with us after the panel discussion.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, so now we're moving on to our question and answer, kind of open dialogue portion. So I'm going to start off with just a couple questions for each of the presenters, and then after that we're going to go ahead and open it up, where we will be unmuting the phone if you have a particular question. So really feel free. We've got the chat box open right now, and so if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask in a few minutes, please go ahead and send those through the chat box. So first, Michael, you're with Meyer Memorial Trust. Can you tell me a little bit about the role of philanthropy in promoting collaborative efforts across systems? We know that this is a keen interest of Meyer. Are there any, other foundations that either locally here in Oregon or in other parts of the country that might be really supporting this type of work?
Yeah, so I think I heard at least a couple of questions in there, and having in past jobs in local government worked with federal funds, I really appreciate keenly how flexible Meyer funds are, and you can do things with philanthropic money that you can't do with government money, and particularly, I think it stands out that foundations can and really should be looking to support potentially impactful new pilots that may look risky or unproven, but really could change the landscape. And so I think that's the kind of thing that gets me most excited at work is when I see something that nobody else right now might be willing to put money into, but we can nudge it one step forward, especially where we can help pay for the evaluation component, again, which is sometimes really hard to get government funding to pay for, and we can show the results that this new approach is having. There's also advocacy, I think, is something that funders should consider supporting more aggressively. Sometimes philanthropic funders are a little bit timid about supporting advocacy, but we actually have a lot of scope to support all kinds of educational and advocacy efforts to change the way that public systems operate and get them to work together better. In terms of other funders in Oregon that might be interested in supporting this kind of work, I don't feel like really an expert on what other funders are doing, but I think the United Way of Columbia-Willamette has done some interesting stuff around trying to do better wraparound services for different kinds of populations. Collins Foundation and Oregon Community Foundation have supported projects like the ones that we fund at different times. And then if you're in rural Oregon, I would really look to the Ford Family Foundation out of Southern Oregon, especially if you're working in economic development or leadership development sorts of areas. That seems like the sort of thing that they are really working on these days. So that's a start.
Great. And so now I've got a question for Lee. So Lee works for Home Forward, which is the housing authority here in Multnomah County. So, why is it, Lee, that Home Forward or Housing Authority would be interested in partnering with their work for workforce investment board, such as Worksystems here in Multnomah County and Washington County, on rent assistance for economic opportunity program participants?
That's a great question. Many housing authorities already have the HUD program, Family Self-Sufficiency. You may be familiar with that program, and it's combining the workforce system and job training with clients who are receiving public housing or housing choice vouchers. And we have that program here in the Portland area and have really liked it for a long time now. We wanted to bring the same type of program to people who just weren't fortunate enough to be randomly selected for the public housing program waiting list or the housing choice voucher waiting list, but they were still at risk of losing their housing. So this program that we've discussed today combines both of these systems, and it's worked very, very well.
Great. So Blair, on your side of the table as well, so you work for Worksystems. Why would you all partner with the housing system to provide this service? Why not try to do that in-house?
Since Worksystems' specialty is workforce development and managing employment programs, and we didn't have any experience running a short-term rent assistance program, we thought it was more appropriate and more efficient to work with an organization who did have prior experience. And since Human Solutions had over 20 years in short-term rent assistance management, we chose to work with them. It's been a really great partnership so far, and as Patricia talked about, one of our biggest challenges is that we don't want this program to turn into a rent assistance program. It could be really attractive for somebody in the public to hear that there's rent assistance available and enter EOP just for rent assistance. But we always want the rent assistance to be a support for people trying to work on their career goals. So Worksystems meets with Human Solutions monthly, and we also meet with the career coaches to make sure that we're running the rent assistance program in the right way, and that career coaches are talking to potential participants about the employment program, not about rent assistance that's available with the participation.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're basically saying that there's so much need for housing stability in in this community and rent assistance, that's one of the concerns, that people will just try to enter the employment service side of it, but really they're just looking for rental assistance. That's
Right.
interesting. Great. So we also want to open it up to questions from those that are calling in. So do we have any, either you could ask a question, it looks like we've got one from Bhakti Rose Dottie, thank you. So her question, or his question is, what about alignment with basic education, higher education, and industry training completion goals? Wouldn't that ensure a number of participants having sustained earnings and stable housing for 12 months and beyond? Does anyone want to take that one on? Yeah, I'll let Claire.
So we do align with the basic education and industry training. That's what the participant, that's the main point of EOP, is to give participants support through their career coach to work on basic skills and industry training. And then we combine the funding that we receive, the CDBG funding and local funding that we receive for the career coaches, with our WIOA funding that pays for industry training for our participants. So it's really important, we agreed, to have that alignment within our program, because that's you're totally right, that if they were not working on their basic skills or their training, then the rent assistance wouldn't be valuable to people in the long term. And the real point of the program is to help people become self-sufficient so they can pay their own rent.
Great. Are we on mute now, or? Yeah, so we're going to unmute the phone. So if anyone has any questions, we can take that away. You all are unmuted. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
All right. So I know I've got a question. So I'm really interested in what's sort of the next step with this project. I understand it's really.
Why am I reading your email?
I think we're going to go ahead and, did you unmute everybody? Okay, great. But if anyone does have a question, if you could just enter that into the chat box, you could enter it in, and then you can also say it out loud if you'd like, and we could unmute your particular line. So one question that I have is, as I understand this, the EOP is sort of a cousin, or a relative to this sort of larger body of work that's been going on for a number of years. How do you all see evolving this project? Are there any kind of next steps or any ideas that you have? Are you interested in expanding it to other areas, or do you all feel like you've done a good job and it's time to sort of wrap it up?
That's a good question. We're always looking to expand the program. So the newest part of EOP, which we talked a little bit about so far, is that we were able to expand the program through a Home for Everyone. So we have about 200 participants who are homeless or housing insecure. So that's kind of taking the systems alignment work that we started with with Housing Works, and we continued with the rent assistance program, and now we're taking it to the next step, where we're bringing our employment services back to clients of the housing system by providing employment services to people who are homeless and who are either right now clients of the housing system or who could potentially be clients of the housing system. And we feel like this also benefits the housing system because we can potentially help people who are receiving public benefits for housing to be self-sufficient and no longer be reliant on those funds. So it creates room within the public housing system to serve more people in need.
Great. So we've got another question that came out, whether or not we can share this presentation with the group. Yeah, I don't know at this point that we're going to be able to do that. But you could always, we can? Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought so.
We recorded the presentation, so we'll send out a link it's posted online, and we can send out a copy of the presentation after we're done.
Great. So just kind of another project or another question that I've got, and this is more for the audience, but this is really great work that this group of dedicated folks have been working on. They've really focused on how it's all about building relationships, and I think that building those relationships take time. There's been kind of starts and fits to this project, like any project. Right now, we're sort of presenting it as this great innovation, but that's not to say that there hasn't been a lot of difficulties or stress or starts and fits, as I said. So we definitely don't want this to come across as if we've got it all figured out. We've solved everything. This is something that's really takes a lot of grit and determination to happen. So with that, are there any projects or any ideas that you all have, and this is to the audience, that you're working on that you want to just maybe share with us right now over the webinar, or you've got questions about? This is a group of folks with a lot of practical experience and expertise, and we could be a good sounding board either during this webinar or even afterwards for some of the work that you're doing.
And if you want to speak up, you can just type unmute in the chat box, and we can unmute you so you can speak.
Great. So we've got a couple comments that have come in. So one is from Caitlin Campbell. She said, very exciting data that shows how important our housing investments are and the need to pair with employment. And just wanted to thank us for the good work with the report, and is looking forward to more happening. And then I think there's a previous question as well from Nick, and Nick just asked about the panel's contact information, and yes, of course, and share that with you all. Are there any projects that anyone is interested in talking about that they're working on, or any ideas that they have?
Well, if you want, you can start at 9. You're running around with
Don't feel shy. I know we all are, but I think we're going to go ahead and unmute everyone, or mute everyone, I mean. All right, so this is last call for questions. I think we're gonna close it down in just a few minutes if we don't hear any dialogue or any questions from anyone. All right, so well, thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. We're really happy to be able to share all this great information with you. As we said, the webinar has been recorded, and we will be passing out the link to that recording, so feel free to share that with any providers. Let's say that you work for a housing authority and you're not sure who your workforce investment board is. You can definitely reach out to me, Connor McDonald with Oregon Housing and Community Services. Part of my role is really to connect you all to different systems. And we understand the importance of housing stability, and there's a lot of other sectors out there that are kind of dependent on folks needing good, stable, and safe housing. And we understand that we need to be outward and be working with those different systems. One other item I just like to kind of end with is just, I think it's important in doing this type of work to start somewhere. Sometimes folks don't know where to start, and people sometimes kind of wait and try to figure out when the timing's right. I think, the timing is right now. So, start fast and know that there's going to be some struggles and some challenges during the way, but ultimately the work that you do and, maybe reaching out today to your workforce investment board director or to your local housing authority or to start kind of talking to some other community organizations that you may be working with is really the way to get these kind of projects started. We know that it takes braided funding across, various forms, whether it's federal or state or local, or philanthropic, or all of those combined together. And you've got a lot of people here in the state of Oregon that are starting to figure out how to really align all those resources together, because we can make it happen. So with that, I'd just like to close and thank everyone for joining us today. And as I said, the webinar will be recorded and we'll share that with you all. So thanks so much.